I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. I am very excited to talk about a film I saw for the first time last night, Alice, Sweet Alice, also known as Holy Terror, also now known in this household as Where Has This Film Been All My Life? 2 weeks ago, Adam and Justin over at their excellent Frightfully Forgotten channel reviewed Alice, Sweet Alice, and as soon as I finished their review, I ordered the Blu-ray. It seemed to completely be within my wheelhouse of taste, and boy was it ever, even more so than I could possibly have imagined. Let me just give you a quick synopsis. The one on the back of the Blu-ray is as good as any you're going to get. When 10-year-old Karen is killed in church on the occasion of her first communion, her seemingly innocent older sister Alice becomes the prime suspect. Matters become complicated as more of Alice's family members are attacked, along with residents of her apartment building. Can a 12-year-old girl be capable of such mayhem, or is someone else with a vicious plan destroying her family? It all centres around Alice and her family and the community church, St. Michael's, this Roman Catholic church. And with this Italian-American community in New Jersey, I think we have this weird Venn diagram crossover of some sort of giallo cross-pollination, this sort of Italian-American feel and this murder mystery, it's quasi-slasher whodunit, feels familiar enough to the giallo subgenre that I hold so dear to my heart. And it is set inside this world of Roman Catholicism, of which I know more than a little. Raised as a Roman Catholic and spent sort of decades within that institution. I now consider myself an ex-Catholic, agnostic, leaning towards atheist, and sort of extricating yourself from beliefs that you were taught, like from the crib up, that seem perfectly natural because you're told them and told to accept them, and everyone around you sort of accepts them, and you step back and go, this is really weird. I'm amazed that more horror films don't dig into the weird grandiosity, the pomp, the ceremony, the ritual, the iconography, especially of the Roman Catholic Church. My first reaction when I finished this, apart from that I was absolutely blown away, was that this was absolutely bar none the most Catholic movie I've ever seen. Up until that point, for obvious reasons, it had been The Exorcist, whereas some people consider The Exorcist to be Catholic propaganda. An awful lot of people considered Alice, Sweet Alice to have an anti-Catholic sentiment running through it. I don't think either of those extremes for either films are exactly true, but there was so much going on, not really beneath the surface of Alice, Sweet Alice, that I absolutely recognised from my 30-odd years on this planet. The director, Alfred Soll, is very open that he took inspiration from Nicolas Roeg's Don't Look Now, so there are elements from Don't Look Now, specifically the waterproof, slicker jacket, yellow in this movie, clearly red in Don't Look Now, and a series of killings. But it's not just a case of monkey see, monkey do. The elements of inspiration might be there, but what Souls does with it is something all of its own. Alice, Sweet Alice isn't exactly a slasher. It's not exactly a whodunit. It's certainly a horror movie in the giallo tradition, but it's not maybe exactly a giallo, or I guess it probably fits more comfortably in that subcategory. You could argue that it's a family drama, sort of exploring the hypocrisies and pressures that perhaps institutions can put women in, that happens to be punctuated with murders and knife attacks, or you can say that it's a sort of slasher movie that meditates much more on the themes it's expounding rather than getting to the next kill. If you're after just another slasher movie, Alice Sweet Alice probably won't satisfy you. There's a relatively low body count. Unlike a lot of giallo, the attack sequences aren't these gloriously rendered set pieces. They're not the jewels sort of placed in the crown. They're not the punctuation of the movie. They're kind of matter of fact and sort of horribly, they're pretty straightforward, a little like the knife attacks I would suggest perhaps in Psycho. Straightforward and all the more sort of visceral for that. So if you're looking for a straightforward cookie cutter type slasher movie, Alice Sweet Alice isn't for you. If you're looking for something that has a little of Don't Look Now in it, in the way that New Jersey is shot, for me it has a little of George A. Romero's Martin to it, where in Romero's movie Pittsburgh, I think it was, felt like it had been sort of captured documentary style. I think there's a little cross-pollination with The Exorcist. If you're talking about the institution of the church being an imposing presence shot throughout the story, it kind of feels a little like that as well, but with more than a hint of the giallo to it. I mean, I think I reacted so strongly to this movie because it just presented to me so many things that had been so familiar to me from my first sort of 3 decades on this planet, but at a step removed to sort of say, yeah, some of this stuff is kind of fucked up. You do realise that, don't you? Right from the opening credits, where the theme music and the credits are playing out over whispered, hushed prayers that sound really menacing. I mean, they're prayers, cries to God for intervention and help, but sort of layered like this in sibilant whispers. They sound so menacing. The murder takes place at Karen's first Holy Communion, and to see all the little children trotted out at the front of the church dressed like little bridegrooms and brides getting ready to marry Christ, and it all, I went through my first communion, my first confession, it all seemed absolutely, of course, well, this is what we do, as I went to a Catholic school as well, so we had religious education lessons that prepared us for our first confession and our first communion, and this is what's happening. And now at 40 something, you see all these little children dressed up as little brides and bridegrooms and go, As an aside, if you're a person of faith, please don't take this to be me attacking you. I'm really not. I'm just trying to convey from where I am what my reaction to this movie was, and I'm just going to leave that out there. And I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just saying this is how the movie struck me because this is my history. But it is, I've never had a movie that's poked so effectively and so efficiently at that sort of church-going experience, one that is personal to me, Roman Catholicism, with all its drama and grandeur and ritual. And to then have this murder take place at this ritual, this ceremony that is there to express something wholly pure and good, and something exactly the opposite happens at the same time. That's kind of where this film is, and I dig it. And I don't necessarily think that Alice Sweet Alice is anti-Catholic. It's just showing you, well, this is what the inside of a Catholic church is like. This is what a mass inside a Catholic church is like. So we just happen to have murders and knife attacks and the like happening where, and we've seen this at the start of Exorcist 3 and in The Exorcist. I mean, this is not something that should shock us, but you have these icons of bodies in extremis. You know, Jesus nailed to the cross. There's a dolly track that moves through the church, and as a wall passes in front of us, we get a nice close-up of some feet nailed to some wood, a crown of thorns, the Sacred Heart, Mary holding her heart pierced. Sometimes you get the heart on fire. It's just, you have the Stations of the Cross in a Catholic church, which is just a series of paintings depicting essentially the trial, torture and execution of Jesus. Throughout the film where these horrible things are happening, you get not only close-ups of the human players in this drama, but also close-ups of the statues, the icons, impassive icons of the saints and the Virgin and Jesus. In Alice, you have a remarkably ambiguous character, and I absolutely lapped that up. Played by Paula Shepherd. She was turned 19 during filming, playing a 12-year-old. So you might understand why after this I want to go and rewatch Orphan. But Paula Shepherd gives Alice, there's enough grey there. There's clearly something wrong with Alice, but is there something wrong enough to have turned her psychotic or into a killer? Or is this a young girl now becoming a woman, trapped in between institutions, as we see her trapped within the confines of the church, the law, and later on in a psychiatric institute? And all three of those, I think, fail her. Where does she have to go? She turns to her mother and gets nothing really back from her mother. In the short piece of film at the start where Karen is alive, first screen performance by Brooke Shields, I'll be honest with you, I was on Alice's side. Karen is the perfect little princess who gets all the attention and gets absolutely everything that she wants. Absolutely no wonder then that Alice, that little bit older, probably old enough to remember her parents splitting up, acts up and acts out to get attention that is naturally denied to her, especially with an aunt who is demonstrably against her, just doesn't like her, and an absentee father. So her mother is a divorcee. That's a big no-no in the church, and we find out that she was also pregnant with Alice before she got married to the man she's now divorced from. Another big no-no. A couple of big checks against her name there. Alice's mum is played by Linda Miller, who in another little Venn diagram crossover with The Exorcist was married to Jason Miller, who of course the playwright who wonderfully played Father Damien Karras. Linda Miller is really great in this. I think if you can tune yourself into the tone of it, there are attacks and then there are these long drama moments, and the drama moments are very claustrophobic, lots of close-ups, lots of enclosed spaces, and lots of histrionics, which the director Alfred Solz says he took, because he co-wrote the script as well, from just his memories of growing up in an Italian-American family. So there's this demonstrative screaming, shouting, arguments, very heightened emotions, and I think Linda Miller is really great at that. And what I found fascinating, she does have that Italian-American look, she does have that giallo kind of look in this film, just a smidge of the Edwidge Fenwick's about her, which of course I'm going to go gaga over. But one of the things I found fascinating about her character is that the more grief and trauma that is piled upon her, the more and more sort of elegant and refined she looks, the the more her outfits become increasingly more fashionable and more statement making, she sort of slowly morphs into almost this sort of grieving Jackie Onassis figure, which dials right into this sort of Catholic thing of really keeping your grief and your guilt right at the surface and being extremely demonstrative about it. I won't go so far as to say that her character revels in her grief, but I think there could potentially be elements of that there. I've seen Alice Sweet Alice included quite rightly on lists of scariest killer masks in horror films. And the mask used here is so simple but so effective and so subtly speaks to the subtext of the movie that it's kind of, everything clicks into place like a piece of clockwork. It's a commercially available mask. Anyone can buy it. That has to work because you have to wonder, well, it could be more than one person because anyone can get their hands on a mask like this. It looks creepy. What it also is a sort of opaque, clear plastic made up to look like a lady's face with makeup on it. So you have a young girl disguising herself to look like an older lady with makeup. Throughout the movie, there are a succession of older ladies, one singing in the church, one working for the police. I think one is Alice's psychiatrist. Older ladies who have that same blue eyeshadow, red lipstick, blusher combination as the mask on. So you have older ladies painting themselves up to look younger. There's this weird clash of the young trying to look old, the old trying to look young. There's a really weird psychosexual thing going on beneath it, which is absolutely interlinked with the Catholicism thing, whereby weirdly, I'm trying to allude to this without going into spoiler territory, but you have some repressed sexual feeling going on that when that becomes hidden behind a mask, the mask represents sexuality and sort of sexual maturity with the rouge and the lipstick and stuff. There's some crazy psychosexual stuff going on in this movie, and that it's all linked into sort of faith, guilt, devotion, litany, ritual from the world of the Roman Catholic Church, of which I am intimately familiar, makes this just such a heady cocktail. So much more than a slasher movie, so much more than potentially a little killer kid movie or a giallo type whodunit, who's the killer type movie. I guess we're exploring a psychology where if you're already mentally ill, you can latch onto any kind of framework and take it to an extreme and bend that ideology all out of proportion with what it was intended to be. If you take an ideology and a framework like Roman Catholicism that is so rich in this iconography of bodies in distress, bleeding hearts, flaming hearts, flayed skin, crucified bodies, tie that into abstinence and celibacy and all that kind of stuff. It's just such an incredibly potent mixture that I'm frankly amazed that it's not mined more often for films like that. But wow, it was a trip watching it last night. We won't be long before I watch it again. Not your typical slasher. If you're looking for a kill every 10 minutes, this is not for you. If you're looking for something a little bit more cerebral and something that really gets its hands into its subject matter, wow, Alice, Sweet Alice is one for you.